All right, let's just dive right into an incredible historical puzzle. We're looking at a conflict where, somehow, virtually everyone involved walked away claiming they won. But nobody can seem to agree on what the whole fight was even about in the first place. Welcome to our explainer on the War of 1812.
So who actually won? I mean, it's a simple question on the surface, right? But as you'll see, the answer completely depends on which side of the Atlantic, or really which side of the North American border, you were standing on at the time. It's kind of like a historical Rashomon Effect, a single event that gets interpreted in wildly different ways by the exact people who lived through it. To untangle this web, we're going to look at the war with many winners, America's second independence, Canada's fight for survival, the British-European distraction, the Native American tragedy, and finally, the legacy of 1812.
Moving into Section 1, the war with many winners, a conflict claimed by all. The absolute central irony of this whole thing is that when the Treaty of Ghent was finally signed to end the war, it essentially changed zero borders. Literally none. Yet almost everyone walked away claiming a massive triumph.
Just look at how this breaks down. The exact same battlefield stalemate birthed three totally different realities. Picture three characters walking away from the exact same fight. The Americans, they're celebrating a triumphant second war of independence. The Canadians, they're celebrating a gritty fight for survival that literally forged their nation. And the British, well, they saw an irritating distraction that they immediately tried to just completely forget.
Section 2, America's second independence, the birth of a myth. Now, from the American viewpoint, the war was totally framed as this glorious sequel to the American Revolution, despite some incredibly harsh realities on the ground.
Basically, President James Madison immediately went into spin mode, crafting a mission-accomplished history. He's out there boasting about legislative wisdom and patriotism, and in doing so, his administration completely glossed over the fact that their grand initial goal of conquering Canada had utterly failed. Oh, and they conveniently sidestepped the rather embarrassing little detail that the British had literally burned their capital, Washington, D.C., to the ground.
But right behind that glorious victory narrative was a brutal financial reality. America could barely afford this conflict. Lacking the financial power for a drawn-out war and suffering under a massive British economic blockade, the young United States was hit with a crippling 200% debt spike.
But here is exactly why Madison's spin actually worked. Despite the military stalemates and those huge financial blunders we just talked about, the war successfully forged a distinct American culture and unity. The Federalist Party, who vehemently opposed the war, they basically died out because they were suddenly viewed as unpatriotic. This ushers in the unified era of good feelings. It gave us the Star-Spangled Banner, it elevated Andrew Jackson as a national hero after New Orleans, and it effectively caused America to just part ways with its European identity, turning its focus completely inward and westward.
That brings us to Section 3, Canada's fight for survival, forging a nation against invasion. Pivoting north, the Canadian perspective flips the script entirely. They viewed the American so-called War of Independence as an unprovoked, incredibly aggressive invasion of their home.
Historian Charles Stacey captures this perfectly. Repulsing those American attacks birthed a really deep, powerful sense of national pride and unity for Canadians, and this was long before they were officially granted sovereign nationhood by the British. They saw themselves as the gritty, resilient underdogs who successfully fought off a giant.
For Canadians, this wasn't about maritime riots or high seas honor, the stuff America was complaining about. It was a sheer fight for survival against a neighbor that openly coveted their territory. Remember, Thomas Jefferson had literally written that taking Canada would be a mere matter of marching. Well, the Canadians made absolutely sure it wasn't.
All right, Section 4, the British-European distraction. The real war was against Napoleon. Zooming out across the Atlantic, the British and European perspective viewed the American conflict as a minor, honestly, slightly hypocritical sideshow, existing entirely in the shadow of a true existential crisis. To really get the context of the era, you have to look at what else was happening. While North America is obsessing over 1812, Great Britain's military was dangerously overstretched. They were running a truly global war, fighting in Spain, securing Sicily, building an Indian empire. And look at the timing here. Just as the U.S. declares war, Napoleon is marching 500,000 men into Russia. For Britain, the Napoleonic Wars were literally about the survival of Western civilization. To them, America was just a peripheral annoyance. Because of this, British critics interpreted Washington's willingness to attack them while they fought a European despot as the ultimate betrayal. The British public just dismissed the Americans as opportunistic hypocrites, people who paid lip service to freedom while effectively acting as a virtual ally to the dreaded Bonaparte.
Moving to Section 5, the Native American tragedy, the only true losers of 1812. Amidst all these competing nationalistic claims of victory and survival from the Americans, Canadians, and British, we have to look at the tragic reality for Native Americans, because they were the only true losers of this conflict.
The devastation becomes crystal clear when we compare the before and after. Before the war, Native American tribes, powerfully organized by leaders like Tecumseh, actually had British military backing. Britain even proposed an independent Native American buffer state during the peace negotiations. But by 1815, the British just dropped the demand to secure peace quickly. The end of the war completely stripped Native tribes of their geopolitical shield.
With Tecumseh dead and the British gone, the Native Confederation collapsed. There was simply no longer any force capable of stopping the massive flood of white settlers pushing west, which was being fueled by new infrastructure like the Erie Canal. The tragic reality is that the War of 1812 was arguably the very last time Native Americans played a major role in determining the geopolitical future of the continent.
And finally, Section 6, the legacy of 1812, how myths shape history. Bringing this all together, we see that the legacy of this war is defined far less by what actually happened on the battlefield, and way more by the powerful myths that were constructed afterwards.
The Treaty of Ghent was based on this specific principle: status quo ante bellum. It literally reset everything to the exact way it was before the fighting even started. No territory changed hands, the maritime rights issues weren't even mentioned in the treaty. Yet the famous British author Sir Walter Scott brilliantly predicted the outcome. He realized the true legacy wouldn't be territory. He expected that American pens would generate the victory that had eluded their swords. And you know what? They absolutely did.
So I'll leave you with this provocative thought to consider the next time you read a triumphant history book. How much of our modern history is shaped not by the objective facts on the battlefield, but entirely by who gets to write the story afterward? From the exact same muddy battlefields of 1812, America forged a myth of glorious independence, Canada built a narrative of heroic survival, and Britain chose the luxury of just forgetting it ever happened.